In Russia, in the city of Vladivostok, a young lady walked into a pub. The owner told her that they weren't open yet and asked if she needed something. The young lady removed her hood and replied that she had heard she could speak to Tigro if she came to the pub. Lisa told her to go back because it was too expensive to commission him. The lady put money on the table and told Lisa that she had money, and if it wasn't enough, then she could work to repay the remaining amount. Then she begged Lisa to kill Gunter because he had sold her to a brothel after killing her husband and son. Lisa asked her if she was talking about the Mafia boss in the eastern region. She then told her that she would have rejected her, but she was in luck because Gunter's head was fitting for Tigro's retirement ceremony. Tigro, also known as Kim Shin, went to Gunter's house, killed his men, and when he found Gunter, he offered him money to leave without killing him. Gunter didn't respond, and he reached for his gun, but he wasn't fast enough because Tigro threw his knife and stabbed Gunter's throat. After freshening up, he went to Lisa, the contract broker, and she gave him the pay and information that came from Korea, along with his passport. While in the car, Tigro took out the file of information from the bag and started reading about Project Castle, a secret organization that takes place at Gangnam Castle Hotel. It was a true form of a national criminal syndicate. He boarded the plane to Korea. When he arrived in Korea, he walked out of the airport and got into a cab. He told the driver to take him to Holim. The driver asked if he had the money for the ride. Kim Shin gave the driver the money, and they drove off. Then Shin called Jin Tae to ask how the investigation was going. Jin Tae replied that the guys attacked him when he was just asking for directions, so he beat them up. Shin told him to lead them alive. The cab dropped him off in Holim. One of the men Jin fought regained consciousness and was about to attack Jin Tae, but he dodged, and Shin ran towards them and knocked the guy out. More men arrived at the scene. Their leader, Kim Hyuk, spoke, saying that Shin and Jin weren't even running away. Jin Tae threw a knife at Hyuk and told him that he talks too much. Hyuk ordered his men to bring them to him so that he could rip them apart. They ran towards Jin Tae and Shin, but they got beaten up. Hyuk took out his knife and lunged at Shin to stab him, but he got beaten as well. Then Jin Tae took Shin to what used to be a pawn shop. They entered, and a man named Pai Woo Jin came out of the dark. Jin Tae instantly recognized him and laughed, telling Woo Jin that he couldn't recognize him for a moment because he looks uglier than the picture. He tried to punch Jin Tae, but Shin grabbed his hand. When Woo Jin tried to fight Shin, he told him that they didn't come to fight. He told him that he was skilled and should work with him if he had nothing to do. Woo Jin walked close to him, asking if he wanted to die, and threw a punch at Shin. Shin dodged it, and they started fighting. As they were fighting, Woo Jin noticed that Shin's fighting style was similar. Then he asked Shin how he knew Kang Min-seong. Shin replied that he used to owe him a favor. Woo Jin told him that they had the wrong house number, and he didn't want to get involved with him ever again. Kim Shin told him that it was related to them and that he had something to tell him about Kang Min-seong. He told them to follow him, and Jin Tae suggested they talk while eating. They went to a restaurant. As they were eating, he asked Shin what happened and why they came instead of Min-seong. Shin replied that Min-seong was murdered by Castle. He told Woo Jin that the reason he came was to take over Hoim and climb to the top of the world, starting with destroying Castle for everything. In order to do that, he needed his strength. Woo Jin laughed and told him that with his skills, taking over the neighborhood would be difficult. He rose from his seat and walked towards the exit, while telling them that he would kill them if they got in his way again. The owner of the restaurant sat down at their table and told them that Woo Jin needed some time to calm down. He couldn't believe that Min-seong was dead. Shin asked if he was close to him. He replied that Min-seong was like a big brother to the Roughnecks, and Woo Jin would help them because they were like family. He also told them that they needed someone to show them around. Shin replied that it would be troublesome if the person was not as good as Woo Jin. He told them that the person held all the information in Hoim, the heir of the previous owner of Hoim, whose power was taken by Castle. Meanwhile, Cha Soo-min, the previous heir of Hoim, was in a fight with the head of D Security, Kang Man-jae, and his men. She beat his men, but Man-jae punched her, and she fell to the ground. When he was about to slap her, the doors opened, revealing Shin and Ta. Shin asked who the successor of the Bujin faction was, and Soo-min gasped when she saw Kim Shin. Man-jae grabbed her hair, asking her who they were. She struggled to get out of his hold. Shin told Jin Tae to beat him up nicely. Jin Tae fought with Man-jae and knocked him out. Soo-min told him that she thought he was dead because he had disappeared. He replied that it wasn't easy to die. Then she asked him what made him come to a gang leader. He replied that he wanted to make a business proposal and that he was planning to take over Hoim. So he needed information, power, and the Bujin faction's influence. She told him that she knew that his goal was Jae-hun, the one behind all this, and asked if he was planning to take revenge. He replied that what he needed was information about Hoim and D's security. She agreed, and then she gave them a room. Meanwhile, Man-jae and his men went to their boss, Gun Deoksu. He told Man-jae that he had plummeted Deoksu's value. Man-jae tried to apologize, but Deoksu beat him to death and told Jian to take care of the guys from the Bujin faction. Kim Shin was practicing his skills while his friends were sleeping. When Jian showed up, he told Shin to leave by sunset and that he could become a leader anywhere he goes, just not in Hoim. Then Shin and his friends met with the Bujin faction's informant, Lee Cheolmin. He told them about D's security, that they sold drugs and took over businesses. Shin Woo-il asked if they had a plan, and Shin replied that they should find their weak point and end them in one swift move. He then told them to help acquire some drugs. Soo-min asked what he was going to do with the drugs, and he replied that he was going to find their weak point. He took a picture of Dae-jup from the wall and told them that he had met him and was planning to come back at night. Soo-min told Jin-ta to stay back and help block him, but Shin told them that he would take care of it. Soo-min went to the D's management office disguised as a conman. She fooled the guards and entered the office. Meanwhile, Jin-ta went to look for Jeok. He asked Jeok's men where he was, and Jeok's brother replied that he was a bit busy, so Jin-ta stepped in for him. The conman met a girl in the hallways, and she took him to a lounge. He told the girl that he was there to see Susie. The girl replied that she wasn't from their store. Then she told him that she didn't know why he was looking for someone who didn't exist. He gave her some money and told her it was hers and Susie's. She told him to wait. Woo-jin arrived at the eclipse and met Soo-min where she was hiding. He asked what they were going to do after getting the drugs. She replied that she didn't know yet. Then she asked him if he could go to the junkyard and help Jin-ta face Jeok. A car pulled up at the entrance of the eclipse and Jian and Deoksu got out. Meanwhile, the president of Hasam Construction, Kim Jae-hun, asked his worker if Deoksu had arrived yet. He replied that he had not yet arrived. Then Deoksu and Jian walked in and Jae-hun poured juice on his face. He apologized for making him wait. A guy sitting beside Hun asked Deok for a favor to get rid of an annoying inspector. Dae-jian gave the man a card, and Deok told him to call him. Hun told Yun Deok that Kang Chang-seok had been released and was selected as a model prisoner. Then he told Yun not to postpone the meeting any longer. Meanwhile, Shin, Cheolmin, and Woo-il were in the middle of a fight when Woo-il realized that they were not part of Deoksu's group. Shin fought with a guy and laughed when he fell to the ground. Then he took out his knife and tried to stab Shin, but Shin dodged and punched the guy, sending him flying into a wall. Kim Shin was stopped when he was about to continue beating the guy. Soo-min told Shin that she could explain. He let go of the guy, and the whole group gathered. Shin told her that he wanted to listen to her explanation. She told him that she wanted to confirm who would take over Hoim when they defeated Deoksu and Jae-hun. He replied that he would give her half the rights, but Hoim belonged to him. He also told her that he would take over because the position was dangerous. Soo-min told him that Min Seong had another disciple, Lee Re-won, a tattoo artist by day and an unlicensed doctor by night. She opened the shutters and a guy left the shop only to get pinned to a wall by Jian. Jian asked him why he went to the junkyard, and he replied that he went to finish up the work they didn't finish. Jian told the guy that if he intervened again, he would kill him. Soo-min told Shin that Kim Da-jeon was the disciple, and the one he fought was Kim Seong-jun, his brother. They used to be friends along with Jian and Woo-jin. When Soo-min's father, Cha-il-gun, refused to help Jian rescue his brother, Woo-jin helped him. They fought together, while Woo-jin stayed to hold the people back. Jian ran up the stairs to go get his brother. Then Yun Deok appeared and told them to get lost before he changed his mind. Jian told Woo-jin that they should go. As they were walking out, Jeok apologized and Woo-jin told him that he had to leave for a bit. Jin disappeared and came back after 2 years, becoming Dok's dog. She told them that he probably did it to keep Seong-jun alive. Now that Shin and the Bujin faction were on the same boat, they wouldn't hold back and would support taking over Hoim. Woo-jin asked her if she was crazy to trust a stranger. She replied that it had been a long time since those guys made Hoim their playground. They needed it to return to its original state, so they would support them. The price would be half the rights to Hoim. Then he had to leave. Shin accepted. When the others left, Shin asked Jinta if he had gotten the object. Jinta took it out of his jacket and asked whether he should send it to Madam. Shin told him to call Krot. Jik was patrolling Gujindong with his men. He saw Kim Hukju beating up an old man because he hadn't paid their money yet. Jik told Kuk to stop, and that he would handle it. They could go. Buck told him that it was all because of him, that he wasn't doing his work properly, and that the president pushed it onto him. After Kuk left, Jik asked the old man if he could stand. The old man replied that he didn't need his pity because he was no different from Deoksu. Kim Shin was in the house alone, remembering a conversation he once had with Kang Minseong. Jinta knocked on the door, telling him that they were here. Shin walked outside and met Krot, the killer of Bar Iskra. Krot told Emma Tigro that it had been a long time since he saw him. Shin asked how Korea was suiting him. Krot replied that he was making a lot of money and even got a bodyguard. Then he asked what Shin needed help with. Shin threw a tiny bottle at Krot and asked him to find out what it was. Krot replied that it was Tfika, an object popular in the alleys of Russia, and it belonged to Python, also known as Bakdo-chan. Krot told Shin that it was going to be dangerous. Shin replied that he had some things to settle with Bakdo-chan. Krot gave Shin back the object and told him to call when they needed anything. As they went to their car, the bodyguard told Krot that he had heard that Python retired a long time ago. Krot replied that Tigro was the best among all, but he had never seen Python's skills. Then the guard asked about the yellowhead, Jinta. He replied that he was Sokora. Meanwhile, Juk met with Barista Alias, a drug dealer who supplied them with pika. He told them that the price had risen, so they would take half. If they didn't like it, they would tell Jae-hun to come to him. They took the drugs and reported back to Hun that they brought the goods. Hun told Jian that he wanted to climb up, but his right-hand man was busy taking care of people in the neighborhood, neglecting other businesses. Then he told him that it was his last chance to get rid of the Bujin faction. On his way out, he met Kang Chang-seok and asked Jian about the scar on his face. Kim Shin and his friends gathered and they discussed recruiting more people. Shin asked Su-min what kind of person Jian was and if he would have a problem dealing with him. Jian was in Lee Ri-won's shop, drinking coffee. Ri-won asked him what was wrong and if it was related to Su-min. He replied that it was nothing and that everything would be back to what it was once he got rid of that one person. He walked out of the shop and told his men that they were going to the junkyard. Ri-won called Jang Ho and asked him why Jian was acting like that. He replied that Kang Chang-seok had been released. At the junkyard, Jian told Shin that it wouldn't have happened if he had left, but now it was too late. Shin replied that he had never thought of leaving the place since he would be taking over. Jian took off his jacket while telling Shin that he would rip his fangs out. Woo Jin was at a restaurant eating when Su-min walked in and stood in front of him. He asked her if she had something to say. She told him to come with her, but he refused. She tried to convince him by saying lots of things. Meanwhile, Jian told his men not to do anything until he gave orders. He started fighting with Shin. As they were fighting, Jin asked Wu Liu how strong Jian was compared to Wu Jin. He replied that he didn't know since they had never faced each other. But Jian would remain the only one standing among all the reputed fighters because he had gone through a lot, and his men didn't have a shred of doubt that Jian wouldn't get beaten. Jin Tae replied that everyone was like that until they got beaten by them. Shin beat Jian to a pulp. Wu Jin arrived and saw that, and he remembered that Jian only got serious when beaten to a bloody pulp. Jian got up and punched Shin, telling him that he had too many thoughts while fighting against him. They lunged at each other. Hun was with Chan-seok. Chan-seok told Hun that the results would be out soon, whether Jian was going to betray them or not. He reminded Hun that Hun promised, regardless of how it ends, he has to give him Jian's head. Hun told him to do what he wanted. Jian was beating Shin. Jintat asked what was going on, and Su-min replied that Jian was overwhelming him. She added that it would be troublesome if he got beaten. Jin-tae replied that they shouldn't think that Shin can be beaten, and they should wait and see because it would end soon. Jian suddenly got beaten up. As Jian was fainting, he saw Wu Jin and thought that he always saw him at his worst. Jian woke up in a house with Shin sitting beside him. He asked Shin what he wanted. Shin apologized for being rough with him. Jian told him that if Shin was planning to strike a deal with Deoksu using him as a bargaining chip, he should forget about it because he was of no use. Shin replied that he wasn't trying to keep him. Jian walked towards the exit and stopped when Shin told him that he didn't think Deoksu would go easy on a hunting dog who failed to bring back their prey. Jin replied that Shin should worry about himself. Shin told him to fight Deoksu with him. Kan Chan-seok found Seong-jun and asked him where his brother was. Seong-jun replied that he didn't know, and even if he did know, he wouldn't tell him. Woo Jin appeared out of nowhere and kicked Chan-seok. Shin was still trying to convince Jian to join them. He told him that if he's worried about his family, he shouldn't be, because he had already ensured their safety. Jin replied that there are unbelievably big shots behind everything. Shin told him that he chose this place precisely because of those big shots. He also told him that his tragedy began with the one backing Deoksu and Jae-hun. He showed Jian the drug and asked if he knew who was supplying it. He told Jian that it's the same person controlling Deoksu and Gun, a killer with a codename Python, also known as Baedu Chan. Python killed his father as well as Min Seong, so to topple the entire syndicate, he needs like-minded people who have lost everything to Castle. Su-min showed up and pushed Jian to the floor, asking if he thought they would be grateful if he shouldered the burden all by himself. She told him to leave for himself, and they would protect him from now on. Jian's men told him that whatever decision he makes, they will follow him. Jin accepted to work with Shin. Woo Jin beat Chan-seok, and he realized that he would lose, so he ran off. Woo Jin tried to run after him, but Jun stopped him, saying they should leave because Seok was going to come back after gathering his men. Meanwhile, Deoksu was angry that his men couldn't find one guy. Seok told Deoksu that Woo Jin was causing a ruckus, and Jian betrayed them. Shin told Jian that he sent Woo Jin to Jun and Bujin guys at the tattoo shop, and he asked a reliable guy to create havoc. Jian told Shin that he knows he is strong, but Deoksu is the real deal. Deoksu told his men that he doesn't need them. He will take care of them himself. Jun told Woo Jin that he is leaving town. He will get himself clean of drugs and try to live a normal life. He begged him to take care of his brother Jun. Woo Jin walked towards Jun and slapped him. He asked Jun if he had gone mad. Woo Jin replied that he sounded like he was going to die, and he doesn't care whether he lives or not. But he should protect what's important with his own hands. Shin and his group went to meet Deoksu and his men to publicly execute them for their crimes and to get other factions to notice them. Jin stepped forward and told Deoksu that he will pay for all he had done to the people of the city and for mistreating his men. He said the only thing he regrets is that he's not the leader of the game. Shin stepped forward and Deoksu asked who he is. Shin replied that their goals are obvious and they should get started. Deoksu ordered his men to beat them up and a fight broke out. Woo Jin arrived with Jun. Shin stood to the side, watching the fight with Jin Ta. Then he told Ta that there are too many of them and he should cut them in half. Woo Jin came across Chang-seok. He told Woo Jin that their last meeting was rather short and he should try again because it's the day he loses his hand. Jian told Woo Jin to leave Chang-seok to him because he wanted to personally take care of him. Jin told him to finish him off quickly because they are short on numbers. He turned and faced Deoksu. Deoksu approached him and asked if he is Woo Jin, the one they call the god of fighting. Then he told him that they will find out whether the nickname befits him or not. Deoksu's men started comparing Jian and Jin to their president, Deoksu, saying he's feared throughout the country. Jin-tae asked them if they think that the city of Holium is something special. Then he told them to take a good look because they won't be able to see it again, and he lunged at them. Woo Jin was about to start fighting with Deoksu when Kim Shin stepped in between them, and they began fighting. Deoksu saw that Kim Shin was not an average brat, and if he wasn't careful, he would end up being his prey. They fought, and in the end, Kim Shin defeated Deoksu. Dae Jian was still fighting with Chang-seok, and he also beat Chan-seon. Deoksu's men started talking amongst themselves that their president had been taken down, so there was no way they could win. Meanwhile, Deoksu was groaning on the ground. Kim Shin told them to admit defeat and stand down because the war was not something they could handle. Su-min told Woo-il that it ended quickly as if everything they did in the past 2 years was in vain. He told her that he couldn't believe how a human could move so fast. She replied that he was different from how she remembered him in the past. Many people were talking about the fight as they watched from their windows. In an alley, a man was on the phone, telling the person on the other side that Deoksu was no more. Jian had betrayed him, but he was not the leader. Yi-seul received the news from his men that Deoksu was dead, and Jian had betrayed him. Then Jian went to the Hope Young Adults Group office in Seoul. One of Seoul's men tried to scare him, but Soo, second in command to his friend, let him pass through. Jian entered Seoul's office and told Seoul that they should join forces. He mentioned that they might have been enemies, but he acknowledged Seoul as an honorable man and respected him for refusing to give up on protecting the neighborhood. Jian also revealed that Deok-soo was only the beginning, and their plan was to strike down Jae-hun and ultimately the castle. Seoul refused, and Jian told him that he understood. Then he asked Seoul if he was curious to know the person who took down Deok-soo in an instant. He revealed that it was Kim Shin, and he believed that Shin could topple a castle. Jian left after telling Seoul to go to Northborough the next day because he had a present for him. The following day, the Southborough Hope Young Adult Group went to Northborough with Seoul. They asked where Kim Shin was, and Jian told Shin that 20 men from the South Adult Group and the president, Yi Seoul, were there. Jian informed him that it was an obstacle he must conquer before an all-out war with Kim Jae-hun. Kim Shin and Seoul sat on the couch while some of their men surrounded them. Shin told Seoul that he wanted to borrow his group's strength. Seoul looked at Jian and asked if he hadn't reported his reply. He turned back to Shin and told him that he doesn't like outsiders like him, Hun, and Deok-soo, because they turn their neighborhood into a pile of garbage. Then he asked Shin why he was messing with them. Shin replied that he has a grudge against them, so he was going to do anything to make them pay. Seoul asked him if he was bringing people in because of a petty vengeance. Shin told him to contain his excitement, because it wouldn't be too late to judge after listening to their story. Jian told someone on the phone to send him in. A guy stumbled in, and Seoul rose to his feet, asking him why they had one of their brothers. Insu told them to explain or they would die. Shin explained that their brother took money and handed it over to Deok-soo's security, and then he joined their group. Based on that, Deok-soo schemed with all the businesses in contact with the Youth Association, and they were also the reason for the financial troubles they had faced lately. Namyong, Seoul's man, asked if what he was saying was the truth. Then Kim Shin told Seoul that they never tolerate those who speak against them. He mentioned that's how he lost his father, so even if Deok-soo disappears, Hun will threaten them and the children at the nursery for his personal benefits. Seoul thought about what Shin had said and called Shin to meet up. Seoul accepted Shin's proposal, then he took off his glasses and handed them to Insu. He walked toward Shin, getting ready to fight, because it had been a while since he had a fight. Shin gave him one punch, and he landed on the floor while his right-hand man laughed. Seoul couldn't believe that he had lost with just one punch. Meanwhile, Chang Suk told Hun that it was Kim Shin. Hun replied that it's the same name as one of his friends. Hun remembered that he had killed Kim Shin and wondered how he had survived. So he told his personal assistant to call Kim Shin. The phone rang and Shin answered. Hun congratulated him on becoming the gang leader. Shin asked him why he called. Hun asked Kim Shin if he had checked the data he had sent to him. Shin replied that he saw it, and whether it gets locked or not will depend on his actions. Hun asked Shin what he needed. Shin replied that he didn't want to see his men on his turf again, and he should also give him control over Honim. Hun agreed and told Shin that he would let him enjoy the time he has left. After they hung up, he asked his secretary about the cleaners. She replied that they were waiting for his signal. Then a man named Nan Guan-huk entered Hun's office. He told Hun that he heard Deok-soo, who acted as a shark, had been taken down. He said that Hun needed fresh meat like him. Hun told Guan-huk that there was a connection between him and the person who took out Deok-soo, so he was taking this opportunity to wrap it up forever. Guan replied that his only job was to protect the personal information of their major clients, and that the person he had sent was enough for the work. Shin Ta-jin arrived at Shin's house, and they barged in only to find that it was empty. Su-min, who was watching them, informed Shin that they had arrived and he could make a move. Shin told the group that they had 30 minutes until Hun's men came back. Kim Shin and his group entered the building, heading towards Hun's office. They blocked all paths to Hun's office so that the guards wouldn't be able to get to them. Jae-hun was informed that Kim Shin had entered the building. He told his guards to go after them. That's when the guards realized that the elevators weren't working and the stairways were blocked. One of the guards suggested using the stairs in the left building near the entrance. They ran in that direction, but they found that it was blocked by the Hope Group and Jin Ta. Jin then asked the guards if they weren't out of breath. One of the guards replied that he was wondering what was going on. Then he told his colleagues to take them out, and they started fighting. The remaining men headed towards Hun's office, following Shin's instructions. Meanwhile, Hun was pacing back and forth, feeling anxious about his current situation. He asked his secretary about the situation. She replied that there were 10 security teams in the hallway. Gwon Huk told two of his men to follow him, and then they got in the elevator and met Kim Shin in the hallway. Jeon told Shin to be aware of Gwon Huk, the director of Sunjin, as he holds the most power within castle. Woo Jin told Shin to go find Hun and leave Gwon Huk to them. Then he lunged at Gwon Huk, but Gwon dodged and kicked him, sending him flying to the floor. Woo Jin got up again, and together with Jeon, they lunged at Gwon. Meanwhile, Kim Shin headed to Hun's office. Then he remembered the time when they were in school and students would gather in a warehouse to fight. One of his friends asked him if he wanted to go watch a shutter fight. They would fight each other for a game, and students who made eye contact with them were beaten up in public. They were able to do it on campus because Kim Jae-hun was at the top, the heir of the enterprise and the king of the school. Shin never wanted to get involved with them until one incident. After school, he went home. His dad, Kim Tae, had prepared dinner for them. They ate while chatting. The next day, a girl named Yusu, he asked him to help with schoolwork. And while he was helping her, Hun's friend saw and told Hun that Shin was flirting with her. In the hallway, a guard named Bo Min-chul asked Jin Ta how they got there. Jin told Sewell that the guy with the scar was his. Sewell told him that he looked pretty strong, and if Jin couldn't handle him, he should leave him to him. Jin replied that he would never let that happen. Then Jin and Min-chul started fighting. In Hun's office, the lights went off, and one of the guards yelled that it was a sneak attack. Shin killed all the guards in the dark with his knife. Hun heard the footsteps and asked if it was his secretary, but Shin told Hun that it had been 10 years now. Shin then remembered when school was out, and he was about to head home. He heard some girls trying to convince Soo-hee to go to Hun's party, but she told them that she had work. Hun's friend, Hu Sang-hoon, grabbed Soo-hee's hand, forcing her to come with them. Shin told him to let her go or else he would have to fight him. They took him to the classroom, and they beat him up while calling him their punching bag. All of a sudden, he kicked Sang-hoon and beat them all up. Hun told Shin to stay away because he is Kim Jae-hun. Shin replied that he didn't care. Then Hun asked a favor from his brother, Yong-sung. Kim Ta got demoted at school, and Hun mocked him about it. He told Shin to apologize and lick his shoe if he didn't want his father to lose his job as a detective. Shin punched Hun. Later, the police arrested him instead of Hun, but they wouldn't touch him because they feared him. Kim Shin lost hope, but his father believed in him. The fight was still happening in the hallway, but Jin Ta beat up Min-chul. More guards appeared. Jin told Sewell that it was almost time and they should get ready to go home. Sewell told Ta that it was not a situation where he could do whatever he liked. It was a surprise attack and they needed to leave. Jin Tae replied that in situations like these, he had a great advantage, so they should enjoy the show he would present. He ran towards the guards and started killing them with his knives. Sewell told In-soo to take care of the injured as he joined the fight. Meanwhile, John and Woo Jin were getting beaten up by Gwon, but they did not back down. Whenever he beat them, they got back up. Woo Jin managed to land a punch that surprised Gwon. Gwon told Woo Jin that he did not expect him to attack like that, so he picked him up and threw him into the glass wall. Jin lunged at Gwon, but he hit him in the stomach with his elbow. Then Woo Jin lunged at Gwon again, but Gwon beat him up once more. While on the floor, Woo Jin remembered Min Seong's words to never lower his guard, even when he had blood in his throat or had no strength in his legs. He lunged at Gwon again, and then they heard gunshots. The cleaners were getting close to Hun's building, and Soo-min was trying to stall them to buy some time for her friends to escape. Jae-hun noticed that Kim Shin wasn't moving. He told one of his guards, who was using his phone's torch to light up the room, to attack Kim Shin. The guard saw Kim Shin looking at him but wondered why he wasn't attacking, so he simply turned off his phone's flashlight. When Jae-hun heard the approaching footsteps, he started firing his gun in different directions in the dark until he ran out of bullets. Kim Shin snatched the gun from Hun and slapped him. Hun told Shin that if he touched him, Castle would come after him. Shin told Hun that in the past when he used to act like a gangster in school, he never went to the top of the roof. He loaded the gun and shot the glass, then told Hun to walk towards the broken window. He made the gun stand on the edge. Hun started apologizing and said he wasn't responsible for his father's death. He explained that his father went overboard for a kid in juvenile, and that's why Castle killed him. He also blamed Shin for messing with them, saying it wouldn't have happened if he hadn't interfered. Shin asked him if that was all he had to say. Hun asked him what else he wanted to hear from him. Shin told him to think calmly. Meanwhile, Gong beat Woo Jin. Then, Shin returned to the hallway. He couldn't believe that Gong had taken down his friends, so he ran towards him and attacked him. Guan tried to attack Shin but missed twice. Then he ran towards Hun's office, stating that his priority now was Jae-hun. Kim Shin had tied Jae-hun to the window bar, and he was dangling on top of the building. Jae-hun cried for anyone to help him, but Kim Shin told him that he came with the purpose of killing him. Yet his face reminded him that he shouldn't die easily. Then he pulled him back up after telling him that he didn't have the right to die yet for everything he had done, and he should remember the helplessness and shiver in fear. Gung saw the condition Jae-hun was in. He was lying on the floor beside the broken glass, traumatized. By the time the cleaners returned to the building, Shin and his friends had already escaped. The next day, a picture of Jae-hun dangling from the building went viral on social media. Kim Ta-hun met with Chairman Kim Yong-sung, the father of Kim Jae-hun. He told them to find the person who did it and bring them to him. Shin then Jin, a cleaner, received a message while in the church to get the head. He prayed for forgiveness, for there was another one. Kim Shin and the group went to Ro-won's shop to get patched up. Sumin asked Shin what he was planning to do next because Yong-sung wouldn't stay still after what he had done. He replied that Kim Ta-hun was the real power, not Yong-sung, so he planned to meet with him and negotiate. She asked him what his bargaining chip was, and he replied that he didn't have one yet, but he would find one soon. As Ta-hun and Jae-hun's secretary were leaving the hospital, she told Ta-hun about the group that had attacked them and the story of their leader, Kim Shin. She suggested that they should get rid of them before they came after them. Ta-hun replied that Shin Ta-jin should be enough. Shin Ta-jin unlocked his locker and saw an envelope that contained photos of his targets. He wore his mask and broke into Shin's house. Shin pointed a gun at him, but Ta-jin snatched the gun, and they started fighting. They pushed each other outside the house. Shin Ta-jin asked how he knew he was coming, and Shin replied that it was normal for him. They continued fighting. Meanwhile, in Vladivostok, Russia, at the illegal fighting ring, Lisa told Medvedi Iskra, the affiliated killer and manager of the illegal ring, that Python had returned to Korea. She was thinking of asking him for a favor to go and complete the story with Python. Will Lisa have her way with Python, or will it be a different story? Stay tuned for the next part of this manhua. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment if you want to see another episode.